Next, we have Assemblymember Miguel Santiago, AB 1016. Welcome, Assemblymember.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and Senators, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present today. I'm presenting on AB 1016, which will require reporting from the community colleges to CSU to track the implementation of the Student Transfer Achievement Reform Act. Specifically, it would the reporting would require the community colleges to report on their 2-year associate degrees that would be matched to the CSU for transfer purposes. It would also take a look at CSU campus acceptance of transfer curricula, and it would look at other ADT data and student learning, and student outcomes at the CSU. The costs are minor, the bill has no opposition, and I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support? Come on, John Lovell, turn that phone off.
Thank you, Mark McDonald, McCallum Group, on behalf of the Los Angeles Community College District in support. We believe this is a minor cost for getting some important information not only to the state but to the students that are seeking to access these degrees. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support? Witness, go ahead, John. Lovell on his cell phone.
John Lovell, California College and University Police Chiefs Association in support.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition? Finance.
We believe that any costs to the community colleges and the CSU to comply with this bill would be minor and absorbable.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? There's a motion by Senator Leyva. Assemblymember Santiago, would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. This is a very important bill. I think it's important for us to really understand our transfer rates, identify who these students are, and then how do we also tag them as, these students are transferring as a success rate. And, in terms of understanding who these folks are and how we can better serve our community college students and fund our community colleges appropriately. So I think it's a very good bill. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Laura?
Aye.
Laura, aye. Bates? Bates, aye. Bell? Bell, aye. Hill? Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Nielsen? Nielsen, aye.
Sir, we're going to keep the roll open on this item to allow our absent members to add on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, we're going to work the agenda again. We're going to begin with AB 178 by Assemblymember Bonilla. Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Finance.
The Department of Finance opposes this bill because it results in costs not included in the administration's current fiscal plan. Further, permitting RDA graduates to obtain licensure and begin practicing without having passed any sort of examination validating their knowledge and skills creates a public safety issue and contradicts the Dental Board's consumer protection mandates. DCA estimates that IT costs related to deleting the practical examination requirement for the Dental Board would be $139,000. However, due to ongoing implementation of Breeze, DCA's new licensing and enforcement IT database, the department is unable to make these changes until after all boards and bureaus transition onto the database in the middle of 2016. For this reason, DCA will need a delayed implementation of July 1st, 2017 for this bill.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, we will, without objection, we move this item to suspense file. Moving on to AB 1114. Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Finance.
We're also opposed to this bill, which would result in costs not included in the current fiscal plan, and because of its impact on the CalHERS and SAWS systems, we estimate that this would have significant costs for changes to both systems, $2 million for CalHERS alone. Additionally, the Department of Healthcare Services would likely require 2 additional positions and $207,000 for the initial year of implementation and $189,000 ongoing. There would also be one-time translation costs for the Department of Healthcare Services that are estimated to be $2 million and one-time translation costs for Covered California ranging from $200,000 to $400,000.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Senator Bell.
I just want to point out that they were supposed to do this in the first place. Have all this translation. It's amazing they didn't do it. So that's my comment. It was supposed to be done in the first place when we started this.
Right. Thank you, Member Bell, for that comment. Without objection, we'll move this item to suspense file. See Chairman Gomez. Mr. Gomez, you have two items, 1251 and 1431, and you waived presentation on 1251. Is that correct?
Correct.
Then we will begin with AB 1431. As it do pass as amended recommendation, members, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. I'm accepting the recommended amendments described on page 3 of the committee analysis. Today I'm presenting Assembly Bill 1431, which will expand job order contracting program available to the Los Angeles Unified School District to all school districts in California. Job order contracting develops a unit price catalog with specific construction tasks and unit prices that reflect local prevailing wages. These construction tasks are normal maintenance and modernization projects such as roof replacements, ADA upgrades, and landscaping. By using job order contracting, LAUSD has been able to save an average of 9.2% in project costs and cut project delivery time in half. I have a few witnesses to speak in support of the bill.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building Trades Council. We are very supportive of this legislation. It is modeled after the Los Angeles pilot program, where LAUSD saw cost savings. They reported back to the legislature as such. That type of partnership between the district, contractors, and labor will be beneficial to other school districts in our belief. And so this bill keeps those protections going with those cost saving and those cost guarantees of cost savings in the bill. And it provides that option to other school districts if they so choose to use it. So for those reasons, we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Brooks Ellis on behalf of the Gordian Group here in support.
Good morning. Leangela Reed on behalf of the Small School Districts Association in support.
Others in support? Others in opposition?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Richard Markson here today for the Associated Builders and Contractors of California, ABC of San Diego, Air Conditioning Trade Association, American Fire Sprinkler Association, Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors of California, and the Western Electrical Contractors Association. Although we appreciate some of the direction that the amendments are taking, we still believe that the requirement that any school district, in order to even experiment with a job order contracting, agree to a project labor agreement on every construction project with a $25,000 threshold is outrageous. If we really want to test whether job order contracting makes sense for school districts, it should be open and unfettered by the PLA mandate. We are opposed strongly to the policy. We think this damages school districts by imposing this requirement, and job order contracting should be tested without the additional PLA requirement. Thank you.
Others in opposition? No others? Then committee comments? Oh, Department of Finance.
Thanks. We would note that we don't have a position on this bill, but we would say that if a school district does elect to use job order contracting, there could be project cost savings from reduced change orders, project delays, and cost overruns. However, the potential savings for smaller, less sophisticated school districts might be substantially less or even non-existent when considering the additional resources needed to execute project labor agreements and meet all other specified conditions required by the bill in order to be allowed to use that new authority.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the committee? Seeing none, there's a motion by Senator Leyva. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is do pass as amended to the Senate floor. Laura?
Aye.
Laura, aye. Bates?
No.
Bates, no. Bell? Bell, aye. Hill? Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Nielsen? Nielsen, no.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to keep this item open to allow absent members to add on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Members, I'm going to take this moment to present my SB 304 and pass the gavel to our Vice Chairwoman.
Where is he? SB 304. I know it's. There we go. Senator Lara.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members. Good morning. This bill would appropriate approximately $3.3 million to the Victims' Compensation and Government Claims Board for the payment of 199 state claims. All but 2 of these claims are for reissuing state checks that were never cashed. The bill also includes 2 claims for $2.6 million in capital outlay bond fund appropriations to reissue payments for LA Community College District projects. The districts received allocations of the funds in the 2006 budget, but the budgeted funds reverted before the construction claims were submitted. The Department of Finance approves the payment of these claims, all of which are valid obligations of the state. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Witnesses in support.
Good morning. Neil Ennis with the Victim Compensation Government Claims Board sponsoring the bill. Ask for your aye vote.
Witnesses in opposition. Department of Finance.
We're in support of this bill. It gives us the authority necessary to, for the board to pay claims that have already been approved.
Any questions, comments? Bill has been moved. Would you like to close, Senator?
Respectfully ask for your aye votes.
Call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Lara?
Aye.
Lara, aye. Bates?
Aye.
Bates, aye. Bell? Bell, aye. Hill? Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Nielsen? Aye. Nielsen, aye.
We're going to hold the roll open.
Yeah, we'll hold the roll open on this item to allow some members to add on. Members, we're going to continue to work our agenda, continuing with AB 197 by Senator Eduardo Garcia. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
As you know, the PUC estimated that this bill requires approximately $230,000 annually for 2 analyst positions, $160,000 annually for a limited-term legal position, and $800,000 annually for 5 years in consulting costs. However, the PUC did report to the Senate Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Communications that its procurement process already considers the factors that this bill specifies. So we would be looking very closely at any resources and workload justification in the budget process.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we move this item to a suspense file. Continuing with AB 329, Assemblywoman Weber. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
This bill would likely create a state mandate that could cost millions of Proposition 98 general fund by requiring school districts to provide comprehensive sexual health education and instructor training.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we'll move this item to a suspense file. Moving on to Senator Mullen, AB 371. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
The Department of Finance is opposed to this bill because it results in increased general fund program costs that would place pressure on the state's budget. Specifically, based on the most recent data available, we estimate the bill would result in approximately 2,300 cases becoming eligible for CalWORKS grants, creating approximately $9.6 million in increased annual costs. Because the budget fully allocates all federal TANF funds, any additional costs from this bill would be borne by the general fund.
Thank you. Questions or comments from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we move this item to a suspense file. Moving on to AB 404, Senator Chu. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
According to the Chancellor's office, this bill would result in costs of approximately $55,000 general fund for a 0.5 position to develop the required survey and collect and report the data.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Senator Bell.
Well, I just want to say that Senator Nielsen and I have been working very hard to get some kind of accountability in the accreditation of community colleges. And this performance review requirement for all the community colleges to conduct a survey to find out what they think of these accreditation commissions, I think is a wise move, because we need further scrutiny and review of this accreditation commission. It's long needed.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, without objection, we'll move this item to a suspense file. Moving on to Senator Levine's items, AB 549. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
No file.
Comments or questions from committee? Without objection, we'll move this item to a suspense file. Moving on to AB 1259. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition? Finance?
No file.
Without objection, comments or questions from committee? Seeing none, without objection, we will move this item to a suspense file. Moving on to Assemblywoman Eggman's item, AB 601. Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Finance?
Department of Finance is neutral on this bill as disclosure of additional information from RCFE applicants associated with a firm, association, organization, partnership, or corporation should improve overall regulatory oversight by DSS. With the additional information disclosures required by this bill, DSS will be better able to identify corporately owned RCFEs and, if necessary, ensure that corrective action that's ordered is effectively taken across all of their associated RCFEs, and the cost would be minor and absorbable to both DPH and DSS.
Comments or questions from committee? Seeing none, without objection, we'll move this item to suspense file. Moving on to Assemblymember Wilkes' item, AB 624. Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Finance?
We're opposed to this bill because it would result in additional special fund costs that are not included in the current fiscal plan. Furthermore, it's not clear to us why the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice would be insufficient or inappropriate, and if the benefits of this bill would outweigh its potential costs.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Opposition. Opposition for what item? For this item. For this item?
624?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Mr.
Okay.
Chair. My name is George St. John's. I'm here in opposition to 624. I am a certified state appraiser, and I am here representing the California Coalition of Appraisers, also the Real Estate Association Appraisers, and about 12 other groups who have nominally tasked me to ask that this bill be tabled, delayed, or whatever the proper terminology is. There are serious questions as to not the propriety of what we learned this morning for the first time when we looked at your background here that was out there for the public to see. Those are the first time we've seen those numbers, so I immediately called the chief of the Bureau. He said he was unfamiliar with them as well. I said I'd take a set to them so he could see what's been offered up in terms of what might happen in his stead. Simply put, the bill has to do with policy. We can't talk about policy, but all appraisers will be impacted by the result of it. Why? Because we pay fees, and we pay fees for licenses that the state is gracious enough to give us and provide administration for those services so we can practice what we do. However, it's absolutely unknown, regardless of where those numbers came from, as to what those numbers really are. And since it's an additional tax to me beyond income tax or any other tax I currently pay as a licensed appraiser in the state, I'm asking on behalf of my colleagues, and incidentally, there's interest in this in other states by way of opposition. I have testimony here that we prepared. I'm sorry I'm going long, I know, but testimony we prepared that document those individuals all the way up through and including the appraisal leadership in Washington. It's a tiered situation. Many of you may be familiar with it. I'm sorry that we were unable to get to Senator Hill's meeting. We really needed to talk to you first. But I do think I can stand up and say clearly, please be concerned with the impact on fees. Yes, they do flow through to the state. That's fine. But the point is, if things keep flowing through and going up, it does impact the individuals who set out to earn and spend substantial hours, more than it takes to become a lawyer, to become a certified appraiser. So we do make an investment in the process of our education.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition.
How you doing? Thank you. My name's Dan Bone. I'm a certified residential appraiser and owner of the appraisal school in Los Angeles. We're strongly opposed to this. The idea of multiple standards has cost us in the savings and loans bailout $50 to $100 billion. Part of that blame was due to multiple sets of standards which were costly to regulate and difficult to enforce. I feel that for uniform enforcement, for uniform education, for a reference source for users, that one set of standards, it needs to be the law for the fiscal security of California.
Thank you.
Chairman, would I be allowed to just read a list of those in opposition?
No, we have.
I'm sorry, it is in the testimony.
It's in the testimony. I appreciate you.
And incidentally, none of those organizations were invited to participate in the development of this bill. None of them.
Thank you. Duly noted. Thank you. Without objection, we will move this item to the suspense file.
Thank you.
Members, we have Senator Williams here. This is AB 682.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Senators. I'd like to thank you and your staff for working with my office on the bill. This bill provides a narrow exemption to the title requirements for a mobile home only for the purposes of a utility upgrade project. It's a pilot and requires the Department of Housing and Community Development to inspect any alterations to ensure health and safety standards are met. The program is a voluntary 3-year pilot program established by the PUC, which authorizes IOUs to convert 10% of mastered metered mobile home park spaces to direct utility service. This will help safety by upgrading them. It will also probably help conservation. However, to participate in the pilot, the law requires construction permits, and that usually requires title. And many of these owners who have been there successive generations pass it on from one family member to another, do not have title. And so both the stakeholder groups, mobile home park owners, as well as Gizmal, are supporting waiving the title requirements. And as noted in the analysis, HCD's costs are expected to be fully offset by the technical service fee authorized in the bill.
Witnesses in support.
Catherine Borg with the Western Manufactured Housing Communities in support.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. If you can just please line up. Finance.
We don't have a position on the bill, but we do agree that HCD's expenditures would be paid from the various special funds that are funded entirely through building permit revenues, and that would be enough to fund the bill.
Comments or questions from the committee? There's a motion by Senator Leyva. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Laura?
Aye.
Laura, aye. Bates? Aye. Bates, aye. Bell? Aye. Bell, aye. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Nielsen? Nielsen, aye.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, we're going to keep this item open to allow our absent member to add on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we should. Members, we're going to continue to work our agenda. Moving on to Speaker Atkins items, AB 635. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
We're opposed to this bill as it results in significant general fund costs. We also think that it's unclear that Medi-Cal beneficiaries lack adequate access to medical interpretation services in both managed care and fee-for-service delivery systems. We estimate a total cost of $30.7 million, 15.4 of which is general fund for the provision of medical interpreter services to Medi-Cal beneficiaries and staff resources needed to handle the increased program workload envisioned by this bill.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we'll move this item to suspense file. AB 1056, witnesses in support.
John Lovell on behalf of the California Police Chiefs Association, California Narcotic Officers Association, and California College and University Police Chiefs, all in support.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
The Board of State and Community Corrections does not anticipate any additional costs for this bill. We would note that Prop 47 allows agencies that are granting these monies to use 5% of the funds to administer a grant program.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Without objection, we'll move this item to suspense file. Moving on to AB 648, Assemblymember Lowe. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
We're opposed to this bill because it contains a general fund appropriation that's not part of the current fiscal plan. The one-time $4 million general fund appropriation would provide $3.5 million for local assistance grants to certain entities to fund virtual dental home technology and equipment, and $500,000 for state operations costs associated with administering the program.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing none, without objection, we're going to move this item to suspense file. Moving on to AB 810, Senator Ridley Thomas. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
We're neutral on this bill because it could provide long-term savings to the state from the avoidance of future maintenance if an agreement is reached and the actual highways are relinquished.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we're going to move this item to suspense file. AB 870, Senator Cooley. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
This bill appropriates $2 million one time from the general fund to HCD for purposes of the new program. HCD in turn is directed to distribute $1 million each year, less their administrative costs of up to 5% for the amount appropriated. We don't have a position.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we will move this item to suspense file. Moving on to AB 895 of Senator Rendon. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
No position. We don't believe that this would impose any new costs on the PUC. The bill will result in unknown future, likely significant revenues deposited into the Ratepayer Relief Fund and available for the legislature to expend on either refunds to ratepayers or programs to benefit ratepayers by reducing their costs.
Thank you. Questions or comments from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we'll move this item to suspense file. Moving on to Senator Hernandez's item AB 1508. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
Department of Finance is opposed to this bill because we think it's unnecessary. When the governor signed AB 576 in 2013 into law, he instructed the Department of Industrial Relations to take the lead to ensure that the existing interdepartmental teams work together and avoid any overlap of efforts in combating the underground economy.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we'll move this item to suspense file. Moving on to AB 1251 by Assembly Member Gomez. Witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
We don't see any impact to the state immediately. However, we think the bill could create a pressure to provide new state funding for the expansion of greenway areas along other rivers of the state.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we'll move this item to suspense file. Members, we're going to open the items that we have open. Open the items that we have open. It's been a long day already. It's Monday. We're going to bring up our items that we have pending, beginning with SB 304. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
7-0, that item is out. AB 602. Secretary, please call the roll. 682. I'm sorry. 682.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
7-0, that item is out. Moving on to AB 751. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
7-0, that item is out. Moving on to AB 914. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
5-2, that item is out. Moving on to AB 921. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended to the Senate floor. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
7-0, that item is out. Moving on to AB 1016. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
7-0, that item is out. Moving on to AB 1064. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended to the Senate floor. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
7-0, that item is out. Moving on to AB 1509. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
5-2, that item is out. Last item is AB 1431. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended to the Senate floor. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
5-2, that item is out. Members, that concludes our agenda for today. Thank you. Enjoy your summer break.